Eleanor Whitmore hadn't felt anything pierce through her numbness in 3 years until she saw the pregnant German shepherd collapse in her rose garden, clutching a weathered canvas bag between her teeth like it held the world's last treasure. From her mansion window, she watched the dog's sides heave with labored breathing, yet those amber eyes remained fierce, desperate, protective. Even as her legs trembled with exhaustion, the dog, scarred across her left shoulder, refused to release the bag. Eleanor's fingers reached for the phone to call animal control. Standard protocol: keep the world at distance. But something stopped her. The way the dog curled around that bag, shielding it with her swollen body, it was achingly familiar. Eleanor's own hands had clutched Emma's yellow dress the same way at the hospital 3 years ago, unwilling to let go, unwilling to accept. The parallel shattered through her carefully constructed walls. The dog's eyes met hers through the glass. Mother to mother, before we continue, please leave a like and let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story. Eleanor Whitmore had built walls around her heart as methodically as she'd built her tech empire. At 52, she lived alone in an 8-bedroom Hillcrest mansion that echoed with the kind of silence only grief could create. 5 years ago, cancer had taken her husband David. 3 years ago, on a rain-slicked road, her daughter Emma had died in the passenger seat while Eleanor walked away with barely a scratch. The accident had shattered more than glass. It had shattered Eleanor's will to feel anything at all. She'd sold her company for $50 million, but the money felt like ashes in her mouth. Every morning at 7:15, she tended her roses. Every evening at 6, she ate the same salad alone. The staff had been dismissed one by one, unable to bear her Arctic distance. Only the gardener had remained until last year, some incident she barely remembered involving missing supplies. The dog struggling in her garden had a story written in scars across her German shepherd coat. That distinctive mark across her left shoulder spoke of cruelty survived. Kaiser, though Eleanor didn't yet know her name, was 4 years old and carrying what looked to be 4 or 5 puppies. For 6 months, she'd wandered the streets with that canvas bag, her intelligence and fierce loyalty keeping her alive when statistics said she shouldn't be. Somewhere across the city, Marcus Thompson searched shelters with a photocopied picture worn soft from handling. 38 years old. He'd once written code for Eleanor's company, though she'd never known him personally. The tech downturn had claimed his job first, then illness had claimed his wife Patricia, and 6 months ago, his 8-year-old daughter Lily had lost her battle with the same rare condition that had once brought her to St. Mary's Children's Hospital, the same ward where Emma Whitmore had spent her final days. Dr. Sarah Chen understood all of this better than most. At 45, she'd been Eleanor's closest friend until the walls went up. Her veterinary practice included a free clinic for homeless pets. Born from her own loss, her son to leukemia 7 years prior, she'd learned that grief could either close you off or crack you open. She'd chosen the latter, though it hurt like hell most days. Harold Morrison next door wanted the dog gone. Grace Williams down the street left food for strays. Officer Janet Brooks from Animal Control had seen enough to know that sometimes the law and what was right weren't the same thing. They were all connected by invisible threads. About to be pulled tight by a canvas bag and the desperate love of a dog named Kaiser, October 15th arrived with unusual warmth for autumn, the kind that made Eleanor's roses bloom in defiance of the season. After the morning's encounter, she found herself returning to the window every 20 minutes, watching the German shepherd who'd taken shelter beneath the heritage roses Emma had helped plant 7 years ago. Kaiser lay on her side, her pregnant belly rising and falling with labored effort, that canvas bag tucked beneath her chin like a pillow made of memories. Eleanor's hand reached for the phone 3 times. 3 times she pulled back. Animal Control would come. They'd take the dog, and life would return to its sanitized emptiness. But watching Kaiser struggle to her feet, reposition the bag, then collapse again, it stirred something Eleanor had buried beneath 3 years of carefully scheduled numbness. By noon, Kaiser's condition had visibly worsened. Her tongue lolled out, panting despite the mild temperature. When Eleanor finally stepped onto the porch with a bowl of water and leftover chicken from her untouched dinner, Kaiser's growl was weak but determined. The dog's amber eyes tracked every movement, her body curling protectively around the bag even as dehydration made her limbs shake. "I'm not going to take it," Eleanor heard herself whisper, the first words she'd spoken aloud in days. She set the bowls down 6 feet away and retreated. From the kitchen window, she watched Kaiser's internal battle survival instinct warring with protective duty. Finally, desperate thirst won. The dog crawled forward, dragging the bag with her teeth, never letting go even as she drank. The water disappeared in seconds. The chicken followed, wolfed down with the desperation of prolonged hunger. Then Kaiser retreated to the roses, resuming her vigil. That night, Eleanor couldn't sleep. At 2 in the morning, she peered through her bedroom curtains to see Kaiser in the moonlight, digging. The dog's movements were deliberate, careful, despite her exhaustion. She excavated a hole beneath the largest rose bush, placed the bag gently inside, and covered it with dirt. Then Kaiser lay on top of the spot, standing guard over her buried treasure. Day 2 brought revelations. Eleanor woke at dawn to find Kaiser frantically digging up the bag, shaking off the dirt, carrying it back to her original spot as if the burial had never happened. The ritual spoke of something beyond simple attachment. This was preservation, protection, a nightly hide-and-seek with fate itself. "She's been doing that for weeks." Eleanor startled at the voice. Grace Williams stood at the fence line, her weathered face kind beneath silver hair. The 70-year-old retired teacher held a bag of kibble. "You've been feeding her." Eleanor's voice came out rusty. "When she lets me." Started about 3 weeks ago. She appears every afternoon at 3:15, regular as clockwork, down at the corner of Maple and 3rd, waits for about an hour, then comes here. Grace studied Eleanor with eyes that had seen too much. "It's when the elementary school lets out. She's waiting for someone who's never coming back." Eleanor's chest tightened. She knew about waiting for people who'd never return. Their conversation was interrupted by Harold Morrison's sharp voice from his adjacent property. "That mongrel's a menace. Pregnant strays bring disease, crime. I've already called animal control twice. If you're harboring it, Eleanor, I'll make it 3 times. "Mind your own business, Harold," Grace shot back, but his threat hung in the air like smog. October 17th came gray and drizzling. Eleanor found herself putting on her coat at 3 o'clock, following at a distance as Kaiser made her painful journey to Maple and 3rd. The dog's loyalty to routine despite her deteriorating condition was heartbreaking. Kaiser sat at the abandoned bus stop, ears perked, tail giving hopeful little wags whenever a child's voice carried on the wind. Eleanor's breath caught. She knew this corner. St. Mary's Children's Hospital was 2 blocks north. Emma had caught the school bus here during her brief attempt at normalcy between treatments. The recognition hit like cold water, and suddenly Eleanor was walking forward, drawn by invisible threads. Kaiser tensed as Eleanor approached but didn't flee. For the first time, they were close enough that Eleanor could see the intelligence in those amber eyes, the weight of loss that matched her own, slowly, carefully. Eleanor extended her hand not toward Kaiser but toward the bag. The dog's growl was immediate, but softer. A warning, not a threat. Then, miraculous and heartbreaking. Kaiser shifted slightly, allowing Eleanor's fingers to barely graze the canvas. It was damp, worn thin, stained with journey and devotion. In that brief touch, Eleanor felt the weight of someone else's everything. "I understand," Eleanor whispered, and for the first time, Kaiser's tail gave a single, tentative wag. October 18th descended with the kind of violent storm that Seattle hadn't seen in years. The weather alerts had been screaming all day, but Eleanor barely noticed until the first crack of thunder shook the mansion's windows. Rain hammered against the glass like desperate fingers, and the wind howled with a fury that bent her prized roses nearly horizontal. Eleanor found herself at the window, searching the darkness for Kaiser. Lightning illuminated the garden in stark, terrifying flashes. And there, beneath the heritage roses, she saw movement. Not the purposeful motion of a dog seeking shelter, but writhing, desperate struggling, without conscious thought. Eleanor was running. Out the door, into the storm. Her silk pajamas instantly plastered to her skin. The rain was so heavy she could barely see, but another lightning flash showed her everything. Kaiser was in labor, and something was terribly wrong. The dog lay on her side, her body convulsing with contractions, but she was too weak to deliver properly. The canvas bag was still clutched in her jaw. Even now, even as her body fought to bring life into the world, rain mixed with blood on the ground beneath her. Oh God! Oh God! Eleanor heard herself chanting, kneeling in the mud. Kaiser's eyes rolled back, showing white, and Eleanor knew with terrible certainty that both mother and puppies would die here in her garden if she didn't act. Her phone was inside. Sarah Chen's number was still in it. Unused for 3 years. 3 years of declined invitations, ignored calls, friendship abandoned because it hurt too much to be around someone who understood grief. But Eleanor didn't hesitate. She ran back inside, grabbed the phone with muddy fingers, and dialed. Eleanor. Sarah's voice held shock. Is everything? I need you. Now, please. There's a dog. She's dying. She's in labor, and... Eleanor's voice broke. Please, Sarah. I can't watch something else die in front of me. 20 minutes later, Sarah's headlights cut through the storm. She came prepared, veterinary bag in hand, rain jacket hood pulled low. One look at Kaiser and she was all business. The years of silence between them irrelevant in the face of crisis. We need to get her inside, Sarah commanded. Now. It was the first time another living being had entered Eleanor's house since Emma's funeral. They carried Kaiser together, the dog too weak to protest, though she never released the bag. They laid her on towels in the kitchen where Emma had once baked cookies, where laughter had lived before grief moved in. Sarah worked through the night with steady hands and quiet competence. Eleanor assisted, following instructions, boiling water, providing clean towels. The first puppy came at midnight, a tiny male, perfect and breathing. The second at 12:40, female, strong despite her size. The third at 1:30, another female, fighter from the first breath. Then came the fourth. Sarah's face told Eleanor everything before she spoke. I'm sorry. This one didn't make it. The stillborn puppy was perfectly formed. Just empty. Kaiser knew. Even in her exhaustion, she knew. She knows the tiny body, whimpering, trying to lick it into life. The sound she made, part growl, part keen, was the exact sound Eleanor had swallowed in the hospital 3 years ago. Let her grieve, Sarah said softly. She needs to understand. Eleanor watched Kaiser accept the truth, watched her turn to the living puppies with fierce determination, and something inside her chest cracked like ice in spring. She found herself reaching for the stillborn puppy, wrapping it carefully in Emma's favorite dishcloth, the one with sunflowers she'd never been able to throw away. We'll bury it properly, Eleanor whispered to Kaiser. I promise. Kaiser looked at her with those amber eyes and slowly, deliberately, released the canvas bag for the first time. October 19th dawned clear and cold, the storm having washed the world clean. Kaiser was stable, nursing her 3 surviving puppies with devoted attention, but the bag, blood-stained now from the delivery, sat abandoned beside her. Sarah had stayed the night, sleeping on the couch nobody had used in years. She trusts you now, Sarah observed, watching Eleanor gently clean the bag with a damp cloth. That's remarkable. Whatever's in there, she's deciding to share it with you. Eleanor's hands trembled as she carefully opened the canvas bag. Inside, protected by plastic, she now saw was from a hospital belongings bag. were treasures that made her heart stop. A yellow dress, size small, with tiny embroidered daisies on the collar. Eleanor's breath caught. She knew this dress. Knew it because she'd bought it for Emma 4 years ago. Donated it when Emma outgrew it to St. Mary's charity box. A Polaroid photograph. Slightly water damaged, but clear enough. A little girl with wild brown curls hugging Kaiser, both of them grinning at the camera. The girl's face was thin, clearly ill, but radiant with joy. A child's drawing in crayon. A stick figure girl with brown hair holding hands with a yellow dog. Lily and Kaiser, best friends forever. Written in careful, uneven letters. A hospital bracelet, the kind Eleanor knew too well. Thompson, Lily Marie, DOB 0415-2016, patient ID 4782691, St. Mary's Children's Hospital. Sarah looked over her shoulder, gasping softly. "Oh, Eleanor, I know this child." October 20th brought revelations that rewrote everything Eleanor thought she understood about coincidence and connection. Sarah had returned with medical records she was probably not supposed to share, but compassion had always trumped rules in her world. "Lily Thompson was my patient when she was brought in for the final time," Sarah explained, spreading documents on Eleanor's kitchen table, a table that hadn't hosted a conversation in years. "Same ward as Emma. Same time period. Actually, they must have known each other." Eleanor stared at the dates. Emma's last hospital stay overlapped with Lily Thompson's by 3 weeks. 3 weeks when her daughter had seemed marginally brighter, had stopped talking about dying, had asked for art supplies to make presents for a friend. "The yellow dress," Eleanor whispered. "Emma asked me to bring that dress to the hospital. Said she'd outgrown it. Wanted to donate it. I thought she meant to the charity box, but she gave it directly to someone. To Lily." The connections kept coming. The Thompson address was in the low-income housing 4 miles away, walking distance for a determined dog. The father's occupation was listed as landscaping, and suddenly Eleanor remembered the gardener she'd fired, Marcus Thompson. She'd signed his termination papers without looking at him, lost in her grief, when inventory showed missing food and supplies. He was stealing, Eleanor said automatically, then stopped. The food, basic supplies, a sick child at home. Oh God, he wasn't stealing, he was surviving. Sarah reached across the table, covering Eleanor's hand with her own. "You couldn't have known." But Eleanor was looking at Kaiser, nursing her puppies with pure devotion, having carried her dead child's treasures through 6 months of homelessness and starvation. She thought about loyalty that transcended death, about love that refused to let go, about 2 little girls in a hospital who'd found friendship in the worst possible place. "I fired him," Eleanor said, her voice hollow. "His daughter was dying, and I fired him for taking food." Kaiser lifted her head, those amber eyes meeting Eleanor's across the room. In them, Eleanor saw no accusation, only exhaustion and a trust she didn't deserve. The dog had chosen her garden, her roses, her protection. There had to be a reason. "The girls knew each other," Eleanor said with sudden certainty. "Emma and Lily. They planned this somehow. Even this Kaiser coming here, it's not random." Outside, the sun broke through clouds for the first time in days, illuminating the garden where Emma's roses grew despite neglect, where Kaiser had chosen to birth her puppies, where connections Eleanor couldn't yet understand were weaving themselves into something that might, possibly, resemble redemption. The canvas bag lay between them all, no longer hidden, no longer buried, its secrets revealed but its purpose not yet complete. Kaiser had carried it this far. Now, Eleanor realized with a weight that felt like both burden and gift, it was her turn to carry something forward. October 21st arrived with the kind of crisp clarity that made Eleanor's roses seem to glow. She sat at her computer for the first time in months, not for business, but for answers. Her fingers trembled as she typed, "Lily Thompson Obituary Seattle," into the search bar. The results shattered her composure completely. The first link led to a Seattle Times article dated April 23rd, 6 months ago exactly. The headline read, "Community mourns 8-year-old Lily Thompson, young artist who touched hearts at St. Mary's." The accompanying photo showed Lily in a hospital bed, thin but smiling, surrounded by drawings of dogs taped to every available surface. Kaiser was beside her, wearing a therapy dog vest Eleanor hadn't known she'd qualified for. The article detailed how Lily had spent her final months creating art for other sick children, how she'd organized a puppet show for the pediatric ward, how she'd never complained despite her pain. Near the bottom, a paragraph made Eleanor's blood freeze. Lily's father, Marcus Thompson, a recently unemployed landscaper, expressed gratitude for the hospital's charity program, saying, "After losing my job, I didn't know how we'd manage. But Lily kept saying everything would work out, that her friend Emma taught her about hope." Emma. Emma's name in this stranger's story, except they weren't strangers at all. Eleanor printed everything articles, hospital newsletters mentioning a special friendship between two patients, a charity event photo showing Emma and Lily painting together, their heads bent close, both bald from treatment, both grinning despite everything. The next discovery came from her own files. Marcus Thompson's employment records were still in her home office. Hired 3 years ago as a groundskeeper. Excellent reviews for 2 years. Then Patricia Thompson's death was noted in his file, compassionate leave granted. His work suffered after that, understandably. The termination letter was dated January 15th, signed by Eleanor without review during the worst of her grief fog. The reason, repeated theft of supplies and food. She found the inventory reports, missing sandwiches from catered business lunches, basic medical supplies from first aid stations, blankets from storage, not theft survival. A single father with a dying child taking leftovers and necessities while she'd sat in her mansion with $50 million and a broken heart. October 22nd brought Sarah back with more pieces of the puzzle. She'd been Lily's attending physician and had kept copies of the girl's journal entries, part of the hospital's art therapy program. "Listen to this," Sarah said, reading from a photocopied page dated 3 months before Lily's death. "Emma says her mom grows the prettiest roses in the whole world. She showed me pictures. When I get better, Kaiser and me are going to visit and see them. Emma says her mom is sad a lot, but the roses make her happy. Maybe Kaiser could make her happy too." Another entry. 2 weeks later. "Emma had to go home today. She gave me her yellow dress because she says it's lucky and it matches Kaiser's fur. I promised to take care of it forever. She promised to take care of her mom. We pinky swore." Eleanor wept then, really wept. For the first time since the accident, Kaiser padded over, puppies trailing behind her, and laid her head on Eleanor's knee. By October 25th, trust had begun to bloom like Eleanor's stubborn roses. Kaiser no longer tensed when Eleanor approached. The puppies, eyes newly opened, stumbled around the kitchen with increasing confidence. Eleanor found herself narrating their antics to Kaiser, who watched with maternal pride. "This one's definitely Hope," Eleanor said, cradling the smallest female who always fought her way to nurse first despite her size. "She never gives up." The male puppy, largest and calmest, became Faith, steady and sure. The middle female, always seeking warmth and contact, was Grace. The fourth puppy, the one who'd struggled most in the beginning but now showed fierce determination, became Courage. Eleanor discovered more treasures as she went through boxes she'd sealed after Emma's death. A get-well card made with construction paper and glitter. "Dear Emma, thanks for being my hospital buddy. Love, Lily and Kaiser paw print here." The paw print was real, made with washable paint, purple and perfect. Emma's diary, which Eleanor finally found strength to read, mentioned Lily constantly in those final weeks. "Lily makes me laugh even when it hurts. She says Kaiser is magic and can smell sadness and make it go away. I told her about Mom and how she never smiles anymore. Lily says we should make a plan." October 28th changed everything. Eleanor was settling the puppies for their afternoon nap when her doorbell rang foreign sound in a house that had become a fortress. Harold Morrison stood on her porch, face purple with indignation, holding official-looking papers. "Animal control citation," he announced with satisfaction. "That mongrel and her litter are a health hazard. You have 72 hours to surrender them or face legal action." Behind him stood Officer Janet Brooks, looking deeply uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Whitmore. We've had multiple complaints. The presence of unvaccinated animals, especially newborns, in a residential area. I have to follow protocol." "They're vaccinated," Eleanor said, finding her voice. "Dr. Chen has seen to everything." "Doesn't matter," Harold interjected. "City ordinance limits household pets to 3. You have 5 dogs. They're not licensed. That pregnant stray could have diseases. Parasites." "She has a name," Eleanor interrupted, surprising herself with the steel in her voice. "Her name is Kaiser, and she's not going anywhere." Harold's smile was nasty. "We'll see about that. I've started a petition. Half the neighborhood's already signed. Nobody wants to live next to a dog hoarder, especially one who's clearly having some kind of breakdown." After they left, Eleanor sat on her kitchen floor, puppies tumbling around her, Kaiser watching with worried eyes. 72 hours, 3 days to figure out how to save the family that had somehow, against all odds, started to save her. November 1st arrived with unexpected allies. Grace Williams appeared at Eleanor's door with a plate of cookies and a proposal. "Harold's got 12 signatures," she reported. "But I've got 23 who think he's a heartless fool. Been organizing through the church phone tree. That man's complained about every family with kids, every birthday party, every sign of life on this street. People are tired of it." Grace had also done research. Kaiser wasn't just any dog. She'd been registered as an emotional support animal for Lily. The paperwork was in Marcus Thompson's name, if they could find him, which led to Eleanor's next decision. November 2nd saw her hiring Thomas Rodriguez, a private investigator recommended by her former business attorney. If Marcus was in Seattle, Thomas would find him. It took 3 days. November 5th. Thomas called with an address, not a house or apartment, but coordinates for a tent encampment by the Duwamish River. Marcus Thompson was alive, living in a weathered camping tent, working 3 minimum-wage jobs, still searching for his dog. "He visits every shelter in the city on rotation," Thomas reported. "Shows Kaiser's picture to everyone. He's also been to Lakeview Cemetery every Sunday without fail. Plot 447 in the children's section. Brings fresh flowers even when it means he doesn't eat." Eleanor stared at the photos Thomas had taken. Marcus looked nothing like the healthy man she'd employed. He was gaunt, aged beyond his 38 years. But in one photo, captured as he left the cemetery, his face held the same expression Kaiser wore when she guarded the canvas bag, desperate preservation of love that transcended loss. "There's more," Thomas continued. "He's been saving money. Has nearly $2,000 hidden in his tent. The other homeless folks say he's trying to get enough for an apartment deposit so he can get Kaiser back. He talks about her constantly, says she's all he has left of his daughter." Eleanor thought about the $50 million sitting in her accounts, about the 8 empty bedrooms in her house, about the roses that grew despite neglect, about 2 little girls who'd made plans she was only beginning to understand. That afternoon, Harold's petition grew to 20 signatures. Someone leaked the story to Como News, and by evening, Eleanor's phone was ringing with reporters asking about the Millionaire harboring dangerous strays. Sarah fielded the calls while Eleanor sat with Kaiser, who seemed to sense the mounting tension. The puppies nursed obliviously, perfect in their innocence. "We're going to need more than good intentions," Sarah warned. "Harold's connected. He golfs with city council members, and public opinion can turn quickly rich woman collecting animals while people are homeless doesn't play well." Eleanor looked at the canvas bag, now clean and carefully placed on Emma's favorite chair. Inside it, Lily's drawings and photos were spread out evidence of a life lived with joy, despite everything, of friendship that transcended circumstances, of love that refused to die. "Then we tell the truth," Eleanor decided. "All of it. About Emma and Lily. About Marcus, about how sometimes the universe conspires to break you just to show you how to heal. November 5th ended with Eleanor doing something she hadn't done in 3 years. She went into Emma's room. Everything was exactly as her daughter had left it, including the art supplies on the desk and the last painting Emma had worked on. It was clearly meant to be of two girls and a dog in a rose garden, though Emma hadn't lived to finish it. But there in the corner, in Emma's careful handwriting, was the title, When Lily and Kaiser Visit. Eleanor carried the painting downstairs and placed it next to the canvas bag. Tomorrow, she would drive to the tent city. Tomorrow, she would face the man she'd wronged. Tomorrow, she would either reunite Kaiser with her real owner or find a way to keep this fractured family together. Tonight, though, she sat on the floor with 5 dogs who'd claimed her kitchen as home. Kaiser rested her head on Eleanor's lap while the puppies played, and for the first time in 3 years, the house didn't feel empty. It felt like the beginning of something not healing exactly. Not yet, but the possibility of it. Outside, Harold's motion sensor lights clicked on and off as he paced his yard, planning his next move. The battle was coming, but in Eleanor's kitchen, surrounded by the unlikely gift of trust from a dog who had every reason to trust no one, she felt something she'd thought was gone forever, the will to fight for something that mattered. The canvas bag sat watching it all, holding its secrets and its promises, waiting for the moment when all the scattered pieces would finally come together. Eleanor thought about patterns and plans, about 2 sick girls conspiring to save their broken families, about dogs who knew more than humans about loyalty and love. 72 hours had become 48. The clock was ticking. But for the first time since Emma's death, Eleanor wasn't counting time until ending, she was counting time until beginning. November 6th dawned gray and hostile, matching the mood of the small crowd gathering outside Eleanor's gate. Harold Morrison stood at the front, arms crossed, satisfaction radiating from every line of his body. Behind him, Officer Janet Brooks looked miserable but resigned, flanked by 2 additional animal control officers. A police cruiser idled at the curb. Harold had apparently convinced them this might require backup. Eleanor watched from her window as more neighbors arrived. Some clearly supported Harold, clutching their own copies of his petition. But Grace Williams was there too, with her church friends forming a counter-protest. The division in the community was visible, a line drawn down the middle of Hillcrest Avenue. "They're early," Sarah observed, checking her watch. "The 72 hours isn't up until noon." "Harold wants an audience," Eleanor replied, surprised by her own calm. She looked at Kaiser, who stood alert, sensing danger. The puppies were hidden in Emma's old playpen. "Move to the back of the house." "We knew this was coming." At 9:30, the doorbell rang with authority. Eleanor opened it to find Officer Brooks, looking apologetic but official. Harold smugly victorious beside her. "Mrs. Whitmore, I'm here to collect the animals as per the citation. We can do this peacefully. Or, you can't just take them." Eleanor interrupted. "I have documentation from Dr. Sid Chen showing they're healthy and vaccinated. The puppies are too young to be separated from their mother." "City ordinance is clear," Harold interjected. 5 dogs, no licenses, and you're clearly not mentally stable enough to— "That's enough, Harold." Grace Williams pushed through the crowd, followed by at least 20 supporters. "Eleanor's done nothing but show compassion to a creature in need." "Compassion?" Harold's voice dripped disdain. "She's a rich recluse who's lost touch with reality. First, she lets her property go to seed. Now she's collecting strays. What's next? Opening a zoo." The crowd began arguing among themselves, voices rising. Officer Brooks tried to maintain control, but the situation was escalating. Then Kaiser appeared in the doorway beside Eleanor, and everything stopped. The German Shepherd stood proud despite her recent ordeal, amber eyes surveying the crowd with intelligence that seemed almost human. She didn't growl or bare teeth, she simply stood there, protective but not aggressive, dignity intact despite everything she'd endured. "That's a dangerous animal," Harold announced loudly. "Look at those scars. Clearly a fighter." "Those scars are from abuse," Sarah stepped forward, veterinary credentials visible. This dog has never shown aggression despite severe trauma. She's protective of her puppies, as any mother would be. Doesn't matter. Harold pulled out his phone, beginning to film. Officer, do your job, or I'll be calling the mayor's office. Officer Brooks moved forward reluctantly, but Kaiser retreated into the house. Eleanor followed. And suddenly everyone was crowding into her foyer, something that would have paralyzed her a week ago. Now she only cared about protecting Kaiser. The dog had backed into the kitchen, standing between the humans in the hallway leading to her puppies. Her message was clear. They'd have to go through her. Please, Eleanor found herself saying. Just give us more time. There's more to this story than you know. Story, Harold scoffed. What story justifies harboring? He was cut off by a commotion outside. A man was pushing through the crowd, desperate, calling out, Kaiser, Kaiser! Girl, where are you? Marcus Thompson looked nothing like the well-groomed gardener Eleanor had employed 3 years ago. His clothes were clean but worn, his face gaunt, eyes hollow with months of searching. But when he saw Kaiser through the doorway, his whole being transformed. Kaiser. His voice broke on her name. The dog's reaction was instantaneous. A sound emerged from her throat, part whine, part howl, pure joy and recognition. She bounded forward, knocking people aside, launching herself at Marcus with such force he stumbled backward. She was crying. There was no other word for the sound she made as she licked his face, pressed against him, her whole body wiggling with ecstasy. Marcus collapsed to his knees, arms around his dog, sobbing openly. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry I lost you. I looked everywhere, girl, every single day. The crowd had gone silent. Even Harold seemed momentarily stunned. Eleanor watched the reunion with tears streaming down her face, seeing clearly now what Kaiser had been carrying all along, not just objects in a bag, but hope that this moment would come. November 7th brought revelations that reframed everything. Marcus had agreed to stay, though he'd tried to leave with Kaiser immediately until Sarah explained about the puppies. Now he sat in Eleanor's kitchen, the kitchen where he'd once left his lunch while tending her gardens, telling his story while Kaiser lay pressed against his leg, unwilling to let him out of her sight. After Lily died, Kaiser wouldn't eat, he began, voice rough with memory. She'd lie on Lily's bed, guarding her things. The landlord gave me 3 days to clear out, said death violated some health code. I was packing when animal control showed up. Apparently, someone complained about her howling. Eleanor felt Harold shift uncomfortably in the doorway. He'd inserted himself into the gathering, claiming his right as the complainant to hear the resolution. I showed them her registration papers, Lily's service dog certification, everything. But there was a mix-up, some bureaucratic error. They said I had to surrender her until it was sorted out. Kaiser fought them. Marcus's hand found the scar on Kaiser's shoulder. They used a catch pole. She bit through it, ran. That was 6 months ago. She came here, Eleanor said softly, to my garden. She chose this place. Marcus looked at her directly for the first time. Lily talked about you constantly those last weeks. Said Emma's mom had the most beautiful roses, that someday we'd visit. She made me promise. His voice caught. She made me promise if anything happened to her, I'd make sure Kaiser found somewhere safe, somewhere with roses. The weight of this landed on everyone present. Grace Williams was openly weeping. Even Officer Brooks had to clear her throat repeatedly. There's more, Marcus continued. He pulled out a worn envelope from his pocket. I've been carrying this, hoping to find you the real you, not the one I worked for who never looked up. Lily wrote it, but was too shy to send it. Eleanor took the letter with trembling hands. Lily's handwriting, careful and young. Dear Mrs. Emma's mom, Emma told me about you. She said you're sad because you think the accident was your fault. Emma says that's silly because accidents aren't anybody's fault. That's why they're called accidents. She says you grow roses because they're beautiful even when they have thorns, like how people can be beautiful even when they're hurting. I wanted to tell you that Emma wasn't scared at the end. She told me she wasn't. She said she was just sad about leaving you alone. That's why we made a plan. If I go to heaven first, Kaiser will take care of you. If Emma goes first, I'll make sure you know she loved you more than all the roses in the world. Emma went first. So here's me keeping my promise. Please don't be sad forever. Emma says you give the best hugs and make the best cookies and that you used to sing really pretty. The world needs those things. Love, Lily and Kaiser and Emma from heaven. The kitchen was silent except for Kaiser's gentle panting and the sound of multiple people trying not to sob. Eleanor couldn't see through her tears, but she felt Marcus's hand on her shoulder, the employee she'd wronged offering comfort she didn't deserve. The truth is, Marcus said to the room, I was taking food, medicine from the first aid kit, blankets. My daughter was dying, and I couldn't afford. I don't blame Mrs. Whitmore for firing me. She didn't know. I should have known, Eleanor managed. I should have seen. You were drowning in your own grief, Sarah interjected firmly. We all were. This whole neighborhood has been sleepwalking through pain, letting people like Harold make us forget what community means. Excuse me, Harold's indignation cut through the moment. I'm trying to maintain property values and safety standards. You're a bitter man who pushed away his own wife with his cruelty. Grace Williams stood up, surprising everyone with her vehemence. Martha told me before she left. You complained about her bird feeder attracting vermin, about children playing too loudly, about her book club friends parking on the street. You've turned this neighborhood into a place where joy is a violation and compassion is weakness. November 8th, forced decisions nobody was prepared to make. The legal reality hadn't changed. City ordinances were clear about pet limits and licensing. Harold had hired a lawyer, threatening not just to have the dogs removed, but to have Eleanor evaluated for mental competency. The law is the law, the lawyer, Mr. Brennan, stated that morning in Eleanor's living room, where an impromptu community meeting had formed. 5 dogs exceed limits. Unlicensed animals in a residential area pose liability issues. Mrs. Whitmore's mental state, given her recent reclusiveness and sudden animal hoarding. It's not hoarding, Dr. Chen interrupted. It's compassion. And regarding her mental state, caring for these animals has done more for Eleanor's recovery from complicated grief than 3 years of isolation. Nonetheless, Brennan continued, Mr. Morrison has grounds for a lawsuit. Property values, safety concerns. What about Marcus's grounds? Eleanor stood, finding strength she'd forgotten she possessed. His service dog was wrongfully seized. His daughter's dying wish was ignored. If we're talking lawsuits, I suspect wrongful termination, discrimination against a grieving parent, and violation of service animal rights would make interesting headlines. The room tensed. Harold's face went red. You can't threaten. I'm not threatening. I'm stating facts. Just as it's fact that Kaiser chose my garden because 2 dying girls made a pact to take care of each other's families. Just as it's fact that love and loyalty matter more than property lines and ordinances. Marcus stood as well. The truth is, Kaiser and I are a package deal. These puppies are hers. Mrs. Whitmore saved them all when I couldn't. I've been offered a job with Greenwood Landscaping. They'll let me bring Kaiser to work. I can take her back. But he looked at Eleanor. Lily wouldn't want that. She'd want what she wrote about all of us taking care of each other. The room erupted in discussion. Neighbors arguing about law versus compassion, property rights versus human decency. Through it all, Kaiser lay calm between Marcus and Eleanor, as if she knew something they were all still figuring out. Finally, Officer Brooks spoke up. There might be a solution. If Mr. Thompson maintains legal ownership of Kaiser and 1 puppy, that's 2 dogs. If Mrs. Whitmore adopts 2 puppies, that's within limits. The 5th puppy could be registered as an emotional support animal for Mrs. Whitmore. Dr. Chen, could you certify that? Sarah nodded immediately. Absolutely. The therapeutic benefit is already evident. That's still circumventing the spirit of the ordinance, Harold protested. The spirit of the ordinance is neighborhood safety and well-being, Grace countered. This solution ensures both, unless you'd prefer we discuss the spirit of your harassment at the next city council meeting. The threat was subtle but clear. Harold had overplayed his hand, and the community was finally pushing back. But the real decision wasn't about legal maneuvers. It was about two broken people and a dog that had brought them together. "Marcus," Eleanor said quietly, cutting through the noise. "What if you didn't take Kaiser back? What if you both stayed?" The room went silent. Marcus stared at her. "I can't accept charity. Not charity. Employment. I need a property manager. Someone to help me turn this place back into something living. The guest house has been empty for 3 years. It's yours if you want it. You and Kaiser. The puppies can go between both houses. We can share custody, like the modern families do." Harold made a disgusted sound. "This is ridiculous." "This is healing," Grace said firmly. "This is what Lily and Emma wanted their families to not be alone anymore." Marcus looked at Kaiser, who looked between her two humans with what could only be described as satisfaction. Her tail began to wag. Decision made. "Lily would love this," Marcus said finally, voice thick. "She'd say Kaiser brought us together on purpose." "Maybe she did," Eleanor replied, thinking of two girls in hospital beds, planning miracles they wouldn't live to see. Maybe this was the plan all along. The meeting dissolved into chaos again, but the core decision was made. Harold could fight it, but he'd already lost the neighborhood's support. The news crews he'd called to shame Eleanor were instead capturing a story of community, redemption, and the power of love to transcend loss. His attempted power play had become his own undoing. As people began to leave, Kaiser rose and walked to the canvas bag, still sitting on Emma's chair. She picked it up gently, carried it to Marcus, then to Eleanor, then set it down between them. Her message was clear. This belonged to both of them now, just as she did. The past and present had merged into possibility. Tomorrow would bring paperwork and legal details, but tonight, in a house that had been empty for 3 years, 2 grieving souls and 5 dogs were becoming something new, not replacing what was lost, but honoring it by choosing to live again. The roses outside bloomed impossibly bright for November, as if Emma and Lily were watching, satisfied that their plan had finally come together. November 9th arrived with the kind of bitter cold that made bones ache. Eleanor woke to find Kaiser lying listlessly beside the puppies, her food bowl untouched from the night before. The stress of the previous days, the confrontation, the legal threats, the constant tension had finally broken through her remarkable resilience. "Come on, girl," Marcus coaxed, offering her favorite treats he'd bought with his carefully saved money. Kaiser turned her head away, her amber eyes dull with exhaustion. She'd stopped eating entirely, her body finally succumbing to 6 months of starvation and stress, followed by the trauma of giving birth and fighting for her family. The puppies sensed their mother's distress. 3 of them nursed desperately, but Courage, the smallest male who'd struggled from the beginning, lay separate, breathing shallow and rapid. When Eleanor picked him up, his tiny body burned with fever. Sarah arrived within minutes of Eleanor's panicked call. Her examination was swift and grim. Severe infection. His immune system was already compromised, without Kaiser's full milk supply. She trailed off, but the implication was clear. He needs immediate surgery and intensive care. The veterinary hospital has the facilities, but... "How much?" Marcus asked, though his face said he already knew it would be beyond reach. 3,000 to 4,000 for the surgery, maybe more for aftercare. Marcus's shoulders slumped. He had exactly $2,100 saved, every penny scraped together through months of grueling work, meant for getting Kaiser back. Eleanor saw him doing the mental math, the impossible choice between his pride and the puppy's life. "I'll pay," Eleanor said immediately. "No." Marcus's voice was sharp. "I can't. I've taken enough charity in my life. I can't keep taking from you." "This isn't about you or me," Eleanor argued. "It's about Courage. Don't you think I know that?" Marcus's composure finally cracked. "Don't you think I know I'm failing again? I couldn't save Lily. I couldn't keep Kaiser safe. Now I can't even save a puppy. But I can't. I won't become your charity case. Lily wouldn't want me to be someone's pity project." The argument escalated while Courage's breathing grew more labored. Sarah finally intervened. Fight about pride later. This puppy needs treatment now. I'll take him to my clinic. Do what I can. It's not ideal, but it's something. The hours that followed were agony. Sarah worked through the night in her small clinic, performing surgery with limited equipment while Eleanor and Marcus maintained silent vigil. Kaiser, sensing the crisis, had dragged herself from her bed to lie by the surgery door, her own weakness forgotten in maternal terror. At 3 a.m, Sarah emerged exhausted. I've done what I can. The infection was worse than I thought. He's alive, but the next 24 hours are critical. He needs equipment. I don't have an oxygen chamber, specialized medications. Without them. She didn't finish. Eleanor felt something break inside her chest. She found herself on the clinic floor, sobbing with an intensity that frightened her. 3 years of controlled grief exploded outward. It's happening again, she gasped between sobs. Something innocent is dying, and it's my fault. Everything I touch dies. Emma died because I was driving. I was arguing with David's ghost instead of watching the road. I killed my daughter because I couldn't let go of my dead husband. And now... The confession poured out, raw and ugly. How she'd been distracted that night, crying about David, about being alone, how she'd run the red light, how Emma had said, "Mom, watch out," and those were her last words. How Eleanor had walked away without a scratch while her daughter died on impact. I should have died instead. Eleanor wept. Emma had everything ahead of her. She was brave and kind and made friends with lonely, sick girls. She made plans to save people like me who didn't deserve saving. And I killed her because I was selfish and weak and... Stop. Marcus's voice cut through her spiral. He was kneeling beside her, his own tears falling. Stop. You think you're the only one carrying that weight? Patricia died because I couldn't afford better treatment. Lily died because I couldn't keep the insurance after losing my job. Every parent who loses a child thinks it's their fault. We're all slowly dying inside. Eleanor, we're all punishing ourselves for still breathing when they're not. November 10th brought fresh disasters. Courage survived the night, but barely. Each breath a monumental struggle. The specialized veterinary hospital called. They could save him, but only with immediate treatment and a $5,000 deposit. While they struggled with that crisis, Harold's campaign gained vicious momentum. The morning news ran a segment titled, "Mansion Madness, Heiress's Breakdown Endangers Neighborhood." Somehow, Harold had obtained photos of Eleanor on the clinic floor, sobbing. The narrative was cruel, unstable rich woman and homeless man endangering animals with their dysfunction. The story went viral within hours. Comments flooded in calling Eleanor everything from mentally ill to a hoarder to worse. Marcus was painted as a con artist taking advantage of a grieving woman. Animal rights activists demanded Kaiser and the puppies be removed immediately. City Council called an emergency session for tomorrow, Sarah reported, looking haggard. Harold's pushing for immediate removal of all animals and a mental health evaluation for you. Eleanor. He's also suggesting Marcus be investigated for exploitation of a vulnerable adult. This is insane. Grace Williams had arrived with a small group of supporters, but they looked outnumbered and overwhelmed. How did it spiral this fast? Eleanor knew how. She'd hidden for 3 years, let relationships atrophy, become the neighborhood ghost story. Now Harold was writing the ending, the crazy lady who'd lost her mind along with her daughter. Marcus stood at the window, watching news vans gather outside. I should leave. Take Kaiser and go. This is destroying you. You leaving would destroy me, Eleanor said quietly. Don't you understand? Kaiser brought you here because our daughters knew something we're only starting to figure out. We're mirrors of the same grief. Leaving each other alone with it is exactly what's killing us both. Kaiser, despite her own weakness, walked between them, pressing against each of their legs in turn. Even sick, even exhausted. She was still trying to hold everyone together, the mission Lily had given her playing out even as her own body failed. That afternoon, courage took a turn for the worse. His tiny heart was struggling, infection spreading despite Sarah's best efforts. The specialized hospital called again. They could still save him, but it had to be now. Marcus finally broke. "Take him, please. I'll figure out how to pay you back." "There's no paying back," Eleanor said firmly. "This is what family does." "We're not family," Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. Eleanor looked at Kaiser, lying between them, at the puppies fighting for life, at the canvas bag that had carried them all to this moment. "Aren't we? Our daughters made us family. Kaiser made us family. This grief we share makes us family. We can keep destroying ourselves separately, or we can choose to heal together. But choose now, because courage is running out of time." The ride to the veterinary hospital was silent, except for Courage's labored breathing and Kaiser's anxious whines. Eleanor paid the deposit without hesitation, while Marcus stood rigid with shame and gratitude and fury at his own helplessness. As they handed Courage over to the emergency team, Harold appeared in the hospital lobby with a news crew, ready to document what he called the dangerous delusion of a woman unfit for society. The cameras rolled as Eleanor stood there, hollow-eyed and exhausted, Marcus beside her looking broken, Kaiser too weak to stand, and Harold painted his narrative of dysfunction and danger. But in that moment, something shifted. Eleanor felt Marcus's hand slip into hers, solidarity in the face of public humiliation. Kaiser, sick as she was, stood and positioned herself between them and Harold, protective to the end. And from the surgical suite, they herded a tiny puppy cry, strong and defiant. Courage was fighting, despite everything. He was fighting. Eleanor looked directly at the camera and found her voice. "Tomorrow, the city council will decide our fate. But right now, a puppy named Courage is teaching us what our daughters knew, that love is worth fighting for, even when the whole world says you're too broken to deserve it." November 11th dawned with unexpected sunshine, as if the universe had decided to illuminate truths hidden too long in shadow. Grace Williams arrived at Eleanor's door at 7 in the morning, carrying an old laptop and an expression of determined purpose that made her look decades younger than her 70 years. "I couldn't sleep," she announced, pushing past Eleanor's surprise. "Harold's cruelty finally pushed me too far. I've been volunteering at St. Mary's Children's Hospital for 15 years. I was there when your Emma was a patient. I was there when Lily Thompson was dying. And I have something you need to see." She set up the laptop on Eleanor's kitchen table while Marcus made coffee with shaking hands. Kaiser lay nearby, still weak but alert, as if she too understood something momentous was happening. The puppies, except for Courage, still at the hospital, tumbled around their mother, oblivious to the tension. "The hospital has strict privacy rules," Grace began. "But they also document everything for their annual fundraising videos. Families sign releases. You signed one, Eleanor, though you probably don't remember. Marcus, you signed one too. The footage was never used because of what happened to both girls. But I kept copies of everything. Call it an old woman's instinct." She opened a file dated 3 years ago, 2 weeks before Emma's death. The video quality was grainy, clearly shot on a phone, but the audio was clear. Eleanor gasped as Emma filled the screen thin, bald from chemo, but radiant with purpose. Beside her sat a smaller girl with wild brown curls, clearly Lily, both of them bent over art supplies. "Okay, so tell me again about your mom's roses," Lily's young voice said, focused on her painting. "They're magic," Emma replied with complete seriousness. "Mom says they grow even when everything else dies. She planted them with Dad before he got sick. Now she talks to them like they're people. Sometimes I think the roses are the only things keeping her from floating away." "My dad's like that with Kaiser," Lily said, adding yellow paint to her canvas. "After Mom died, Kaiser's the only one he really talks to. Maybe your mom needs a Kaiser. Maybe your dad needs roses," Emma countered, and both girls giggled with the pure joy that only children can find in the midst of tragedy. The video jumped to another day. Emma was teaching Lily to make friendship bracelets while Kaiser, younger, healthier, wearing her service vest, lay between their beds. "Promise me something," Emma said suddenly, her voice serious. "If I die first." "You won't die," Lily interrupted fiercely. "But if I do," Emma continued, "promise you'll make sure my mom's not alone. She acts tough, but she's really not. She needs someone who understands about losing everything." "Only if you promise the same," Lily countered. "If I die first, you have to make sure Dad and Kaiser are okay." "Deal." "Deal." Pinky swear. Their small hands linked on camera, two dying children making plans for the living they'd leave behind. Grace clicked to another file, this one from the day before Emma's death. Eleanor had to grip the table as her daughter's face appeared, drawn with pain but determined. "Miss Grace," Emma said to the camera, "can you record something for me? For after—" Grace's voice from behind the camera was gentle. "Of course, sweetheart." Emma looked directly at the lens. "Mom, if you're watching this, it means the plan worked. Lily and I made a plan. We knew we couldn't both make it, the doctors pretend, but we know. So we decided that whoever goes first, the other one will make sure our families find each other. Lily's dad is really nice. He's sad like you, but in a different way. And Kaiser is magic. She really is. She knows when people hurt inside." Emma paused, struggling for breath, then continued. "I need you to know the accident wasn't your fault. I saw the other car run their light. You couldn't have stopped in time even if you'd seen it sooner. I wanted to tell you right away, but then I couldn't talk and then I was gone. But Mom, you have to stop blaming yourself. You have to let people in. Lily says her dad needs that too. So when Kaiser shows up, and she will, Lily promised, please don't send her away. Please." The video ended. Eleanor was sobbing. Marcus had his head in his hands. Even Grace was crying, but she wasn't done. "There's more," Grace said softly, opening another folder. "Lily left something too." This video was from 2 days before Lily's death. She was propped up in bed, Kaiser beside her, clutching the yellow dress Emma had given her. "Miss Grace," Lily whispered, her voice barely audible. "I need to tell someone the truth. Dad doesn't know, but I heard the doctors. I'm not going home. Kaiser knows too. She won't leave my side anymore." Kaiser on the video whined softly, pressing closer to the dying child. "Emma was right about the plan," Lily continued. "Her mom needs my dad and Kaiser. Dad needs her mom and the roses. They're both so sad they can't see that they're drowning the same way. So I'm going to make sure Kaiser finds her." I showed Kaiser pictures of the roses from Emma's phone. "Dogs are smart. She'll remember. She'll go there when I'm gone, and she'll stay until Dad finds her." Lily held up the canvas bag, the same one Kaiser had carried for 6 months. "Everything important goes in here. Emma's dress because it's lucky. Our picture because love should be remembered. My hospital bracelet so they'll know who I was. And this." She pulled out a sealed envelope. "This is for Emma's mom. Dad doesn't know I wrote it. Promise you'll make sure she gets it if Kaiser's plan works." The video ended. Grace pulled an envelope from her bag, worn, yellowed, but still sealed. "I've been carrying this for 6 months, not knowing how to deliver it." Then Kaiser showed up at Eleanor's garden, just like Lily said she would. Eleanor opened it with trembling hands. Inside, in careful child's handwriting, "Dear Emma's mom, Emma told me you blame yourself for the accident. She said you were crying about Mr. David when it happened. She wanted me to tell you something, but made me promise to only tell you when you were ready to hear it. She said Mr. David visited her in a dream the night before the accident. He told her he was coming to get her soon, that it would look scary but wouldn't hurt, and that you would blame yourself, but it wasn't your fault. It was just time for Emma to help him with something important in heaven." Emma said Mr. David told her they had work to do preparing a place for all the sad people who would come later. He said you had work to do too, learning how to help other sad people here. But first you had to learn how to be sad the right way, not the destroying yourself way. I don't know if you believe in dreams or heaven. Daddy doesn't anymore, but Emma believed, and she wasn't scared at the end. She said to tell you that Mr. David caught her when the accident happened. She said it felt like flying. Please don't be sad forever. Emma and Mr. David are watching. They're probably friends with my mom now, too. Maybe they're all taking care of each other up there like we're supposed to take care of each other down here. Also, Kaiser is the best dog in the world. She'll love you if you let her. She already knows about you from all the stories Emma told us. Love. Lily Thompson, Emma's hospital sister. November 12th brought the final revelation. Officer Janet Brooks requested a private meeting with Eleanor and Marcus before the city council session that afternoon. She arrived in civilian clothes, looking uncomfortable but determined. I've been on the force for 12 years, she began without preamble. I've handled hundreds of animal complaints. Harold Morrison has filed 43 complaints in the past 5 years. I've documented every one. She spread papers across Eleanor's table, a staggering record of harassment. Complaints about children playing, about birthday parties, about bird feeders, about garden decorations, about cars parked legally on the street. 6 families have moved because of him. Officer Brooks continued. His own wife, Martha, filed a restraining order when she left. She cited psychological abuse, controlling behavior, and isolation from friends and family. Sound familiar? Marcus looked at the papers with growing anger. He's been terrorizing the entire neighborhood. It's worse than that, Brooks said. I did some digging after yesterday's hospital confrontation. Harold has financial troubles. His house is in foreclosure. He's been trying to force Eleanor out so he can convince developers that the whole street is available for a commercial development project. He's got investors lined up, contingent on clearing the problem properties. Eleanor stared at her. He's destroying our lives for money. For money and control, then. Brooks confirmed. But here's the thing. I've been recording our interactions. His demands that I ignore protocol. His threats about my job if I don't comply. His admission that the animal complaint is really about forcing you out. It's all documented. She pulled out her phone, playing a recording from just that morning. Harold's voice was clear. I don't care if those mutts are healthy. I don't care if they're therapy dogs or emotional support or whatever bleeding heart nonsense she claims. I need that crazy woman gone. Either you do your job, or I'll make sure you don't have one. This is evidence of harassment and attempted extortion, Brooks said. I'm willing to testify at the council meeting, but there's more. She looked directly at Marcus. I was the officer who was supposed to confiscate Kaiser 6 months ago. The bureaucratic error, that was me. I saw that little girl's service dog certification, saw how sick Lily was, and I delayed the paperwork. By the time it went through, Lily had passed and Kaiser had disappeared. I've been looking for her ever since, to apologize, to make it right. Marcus's voice was thick with emotion. You gave my daughter 3 more days with her dog before she died. Those were her last good days. The truth hung in the air, heavy and transformative. Everything they'd believed about their isolation, their guilt, their unworthiness, it was all being rewritten by the truth of 2 children's love and a community finally ready to stand against cruelty. Sarah arrived with incredible news. Courage is responding to treatment. He's going to make it. The hospital said it's remarkable he shouldn't have survived, but something kept him fighting. Eleanor looked at the canvas bag, now empty of its secrets but full of meaning. Lily kept Kaiser fighting for 6 months. Their love keeps us all fighting. Grace stood, suddenly looking like a general preparing for battle. Harold Morrison has terrorized this neighborhood long enough. He's turned us against each other, made us suspicious and isolated. But 2 little girls and 1 determined dog have shown us what we really are, a community that takes care of each other. As they prepared for the city council meeting that afternoon, more neighbors arrived. Stories poured out Harold's complaints that had driven away the young family with twins, the elderly man who'd stopped walking his dog, the woman who'd removed her garden because Harold said it attracted pests. Each story added to the pattern of a man who'd turned a neighborhood into his personal kingdom of misery. "He picked the wrong target this time," Grace declared, looking at Eleanor and Marcus. "He thought grief made you weak. He didn't understand that grief shared becomes strength." Eleanor felt something shift inside her chest, not healing, not yet, but the possibility of it. Marcus stood beside her, no longer as employee or charity case, but as fellow survivor. Kaiser, despite her weakness, stood too, ready to face whatever came next. The truth had finally emerged from the shadows where Harold had tried to bury it. Two daughters' conspiracy of love, a dog's unwavering loyalty, a community's awakening conscience. All of it converged as they prepared to face the city council. The reversal was complete. Harold Morrison, who'd painted himself as the righteous neighbor protecting property values, was revealed as the true threat to the community's well-being. Eleanor and Marcus, whom he'd portrayed as unstable and dangerous, were shown to be exactly what their daughters had known. They were two broken people who could help each other heal if given the chance. As they walked to the cars that would take them to City Hall, Eleanor noticed something remarkable. Kaiser was walking stronger, as if the truth itself had given her strength. The roses in the garden, despite the November cold, had burst into impossible bloom. Perhaps Emma and Lily were watching. Perhaps love really could transcend death. Perhaps a canvas bag carried by a faithful dog could indeed hold enough love to save multiple lives. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time, Eleanor believed they could win. More importantly, she believed they deserved to win. The truth had set them all free from the prisons of guilt and isolation they'd built. Now it was time to see if the community would choose compassion over control, love over law, healing over harassment. November 13th arrived with the kind of crisp clarity that made everything seem possible. The city council chambers were packed beyond capacity, with people standing in the aisles and spilling into the hallway. Harold Morrison sat in the front row with his lawyer, confidence wavering as he noticed the crowd wasn't the angry mob he'd orchestrated, but rather a diverse gathering of neighbors, many holding handmade signs reading, "Community means compassion, and let love live." Council President Rebecca Hayes called the session to order. But before Harold's lawyer could speak, Grace Williams stood. "Point of order," she said, her teacher's voice carrying perfectly. "We'd like to present evidence that this complaint is not about animal welfare, but rather harassment and attempted extortion." The room erupted. Harold's lawyer objected, but Officer Brooks was already approaching the podium with her documented evidence. For the next hour, the truth poured out Harold's 43 complaints, the families driven away, the recording of his threats, his financial motivations for forcing Eleanor out. Then came the neighbors, one by one. The young couple who'd moved away spoke via video call about Harold's relentless harassment over their twins' normal playing. The elderly man, Mr. Chen, revealed that Harold had poisoned his beloved garden because it attracted bees. Martha Morrison appeared via video from her sister's home in Portland, describing years of psychological abuse and isolation. But it was Eleanor who delivered the most powerful testimony. She stood, Marcus beside her, Kaiser at their feet despite veterinary advice to rest. "3 years ago, I lost my daughter in an accident I caused," she began, her voice steady. "I retreated from the world, from community, from love itself. I became exactly what Harold Morrison wanted: isolated, silent, invisible. But 2 8-year-old girls had different plans." She told the story completely: Emma and Lily's friendship, their pact, Kaiser's 6-month journey with the canvas bag, the reunion that brought 2 grieving families together. She played the videos Grace had preserved, letting Emma and Lily speak for themselves. There wasn't a dry eye in the chamber when Emma's voice rang out, "Mom, you have to stop blaming yourself. You have to let people in." "Harold Morrison saw our grief as weakness to exploit," Eleanor continued. "But our daughters saw it as something else, an opportunity for healing. They conspired from their hospital beds to ensure we wouldn't destroy ourselves with isolation. A dog named Kaiser carried their plan through impossible odds, and a community rallied when it mattered most." She looked directly at Harold. You tried to weaponize the law against love. You turned neighbor against neighbor for profit. But you failed to understand something fundamental. Love is stronger than law, compassion more powerful than control, and community more valuable than property. Marcus spoke next, his voice rough but determined. I was homeless, searching for my dog, dying inside from grief. Eleanor Whitmore had every reason to turn Kaiser and me away. Instead, she fought for us. She paid thousands in medical bills for a puppy that wasn't even hers. She opened her home to the man she'd once fired. That's not mental illness, that's radical compassion. It's what our daughters wanted. It's what this community needs. The vote was unanimous. Not only were Eleanor and Marcus permitted to keep all the dogs with special variants for their unique situation, but Harold Morrison was censured for abuse of the complaint system. His developer friends, exposed to public scrutiny, withdrew their offers. Within a week, Harold would list his house and leave the neighborhood he'd terrorized for years. But the real victory came in what happened next. As people filed out, they didn't leave. Instead, they gathered around Eleanor and Marcus, sharing their own stories of loss, offering help, rebuilding connections Harold had severed. The city council meeting had become exactly what the outline predicted: a community healing session. November 15th marked new beginnings. Eleanor stood in her dusty guest house with Marcus, Kaiser between them, puppies tumbling over their feet. Courage, still weak but recovering, was carried in Sarah's arms. It needs work, Eleanor said, gesturing at the space that had been closed since David's death. But it's yours if you want it. You and Kaiser? Not as charity, as family. Marcus looked around the two-bedroom space, seeing possibility instead of charity. I can fix it up. I'm good with my hands. Maybe we can convert part of it into an office for, he stopped, uncertain, for the Lily Emma Foundation. Eleanor finished. I've been thinking, all this money sitting in accounts while people suffer losses like ours. What if we created something to help grief counseling, pet therapy programs, support for families with terminally ill children? Lily would have loved that, Marcus said softly. She always said Kaiser should be able to visit all the sad kids, not just her. They worked through November, transforming not just the guest house but the entire property. The gardens that had been maintained in rigid perfection became welcoming spaces with benches and paths. A play area for the puppies was built where Emma's old swing set had stood. The formal dining room became the foundation's headquarters, walls covered with photos of Emma and Lily, their hospital art, and maps marking families they'd help. By December 1st, word had spread. Families started reaching out: parents who'd lost children, children who'd lost parents, all drowning in the kind of grief that Eleanor and Marcus understood. Kaiser's puppies began training as therapy dogs, their natural empathy enhanced by professional instruction. Hope, the smallest but fiercest, showed remarkable ability to sense distress. She was matched with a 7-year-old boy who'd stopped speaking after his sister's death. Within 3 visits, he was whispering to Hope. Within 6, he was talking to his parents again. Faith, calm and steady, went to work at St. Mary's Children's Hospital, carrying on the tradition Emma and Lily had started. Children who were too sick to have their own pets could cuddle with Faith, finding comfort in his warm presence. Grace, named after Grace Williams, became her namesake's constant companion. The elderly woman had been lonelier than anyone knew, and the puppy filled a void she'd never admitted existed. Courage stayed with Eleanor and Marcus, his survival making him a symbol of what was possible against impossible odds. He required ongoing care, but he faced each challenge with the determination that had saved him. Children who visited the foundation were especially drawn to him, the puppy who shouldn't have made it but did. December brought unexpected healing. Eleanor found herself playing piano again, something she hadn't done since Emma's death. The music drew Marcus from the guest house, and they discovered he had a decent singing voice. Evening became informal concerts, with neighbors dropping by to listen and share meals. Sarah Chen became a regular, bringing medical expertise to the foundation and friendship to Eleanor that picked up where it had left off 3 years ago. "You've changed," she told Eleanor one evening. "The walls are gone." "The walls were killing me," Eleanor replied, watching Marcus teach neighborhood kids how to properly approach dogs. Emma knew that. Lily knew that. They sent Kaiser to demolish them. December 25th arrived with snow, the first white Christmas Seattle had seen in years. The main house was transformed, lights twinkling. Tree decorated with ornaments made by children the foundation had helped. Kitchen filled with cooking smells that hadn't graced the space since before David's death. The dinner table was set for 12. Grace Williams arrived first, bearing her famous apple pie and stories of how Grace the puppy had learned to fetch her slippers. Sarah brought her partner, finally comfortable enough to share her whole life. The Chen family came with their rescued dog, trained by Marcus. 3 families who'd received foundation support joined them, their children playing with the puppies while adults shared stories of survival and hope. Eleanor and Marcus stood in the kitchen, preparing the meal together with an ease that had developed over months of shared mornings and mutual support. Kaiser lay between them, no longer clutching the canvas bag but watching it where it hung in a place of honor, shadow-boxed on the wall with a plaque reading, "Love transcends loss," in memory of Emma Whitmore and Lily Thompson, hospital sisters forever. "They did this," Marcus said, nodding toward the dining room full of laughter. "2 little girls who refused to let death win." Eleanor felt the truth of it. The empty chairs remained they always would. David, Emma, Patricia, Lily, their absence was permanent. But around those empty spaces, life had grown again. Different but no less meaningful. After dinner, as snow fell like benediction outside, Eleanor played Emma's favorite Christmas carol while everyone sang. Marcus pulled out a letter, one of dozens they'd received from families helped by the foundation. "Dear Lily Emma Foundation," he read, "you saved our lives. When our son died, we thought about following him. Your therapy dogs, your support group, your understanding that grief isn't something to get over, but something to carry together, it kept us alive until we could remember how to live." Kaiser rose from her bed by the fire, walked to the shadow-boxed canvas bag, and touched her nose to the glass, a gesture she made daily, honoring what it represented. Then she walked to Eleanor, to Marcus, and lay down between them. Her work finally complete. As midnight approached, the gathering moved to the garden. The roses, dormant for winter but still standing strong, were covered in snow that made them seem to glow in the moonlight. Everyone stood quietly, remembering those absent, grateful for those present. "Look," a child whispered, pointing at the sky. The snow had stopped, and through a break in the clouds, stars were visible, bright and clear and infinite. Eleanor found herself thinking of Emma's last video, her words about David catching her, about flying instead of falling. Maybe it was true. Maybe love really did transcend death, carrying forward in the actions of those left behind. 1 year later, the Lily Emma Memorial Animal Sanctuary held its grand opening. Built on land donated by the city where Harold's failed development would have stood, it served as a place where grieving families could find comfort through connection with animals, with nature, with others who understood that broken didn't mean worthless. Marcus managed the sanctuary with the same devotion he'd once reserved for grief. He'd completed his degree in nonprofit management, funded by the foundation, but earned through his own determination. Eleanor taught art therapy to parents who'd lost children, helping them express what words couldn't capture. Kaiser, now healthy and strong, served as the sanctuary's ambassador. Her puppies, all certified therapy dogs, worked throughout Seattle in hospitals, schools, nursing homes, anywhere healing was needed. The canvas bag, now in the sanctuary's memorial room, had become a symbol visited by hundreds who'd heard the story of 2 girls, 2 families, and a dog who refused to let love die. Standing at the opening ceremony, Eleanor spoke to the crowd. "Some angels have 4 legs, and teach us that love never truly dies, it just waits to be found again. Emma and Lily knew this. They sent Kaiser to teach us. Today, we honor their legacy by promising that no one grieves alone. No love is forgotten, and every ending can become a beginning if we're brave enough to let others in. Kaiser sat between Eleanor and Marcus as they cut the ribbon, her tail wagging with the joy of a dog who'd completed her mission. She'd carried the bag through 6 months of hardship, brought 2 broken families together, and sparked a community's transformation. But more than that, she'd proven what Emma and Lily always knew. Love is the strongest force in the universe, capable of surviving death, transcending loss, and creating beauty from the deepest pain. As the crowd dispersed to explore the sanctuary, Eleanor noticed 2 butterflies dancing among the roses Marcus had planted, yellow and purple, Emma and Lily's favorite colors. They circled Kaiser once before disappearing into the sunshine, and Eleanor could almost hear her daughter's laughter, Lily's giggle, telling them all, "See, we told you it would work out." The canvas bag had completed its journey, but the love it carried would ripple outward forever, touching lives the girls had never met, healing hearts they'd never know, proving that sometimes the smallest acts of love create the largest waves of change. In the end, that was their true legacy, not the sadness of their passing, but the joy of their love, carried forward by a faithful dog and 2 families who'd learned that broken hearts, when brought together, can indeed make something whole. I need to tell you something about this story, something I've learned from watching Eleanor and Marcus find their way back to life. We spend so much time building walls around our grief, convinced we're protecting ourselves, when really we're just dying slowly in isolation. I've done it myself. Pushed away hands reaching out, declined invitations, pretended I was fine alone. But here's what Kaiser knew that we forgot: family isn't just blood. It's the people who show up when you're collapsed in your garden, clutching your pain like a canvas bag. It's the neighbor who fights for you when you can't fight for yourself. It's the stranger whose grief mirrors yours so perfectly that healing one helps heal both. Gratitude isn't about being thankful for tragedy. Eleanor will never be grateful for that accident. Marcus will never appreciate losing Lily. But they learned to be grateful for what grew from that barren ground connection: purpose, the discovery that love doesn't actually die. It just changes form, carried forward by faithful hearts. Sometimes angels really do have 4 legs. Sometimes 2 broken families make one whole one. Sometimes the universe conspires through children's promises and a dog's devotion to teach us the simplest, hardest truth: we're meant to carry each other.